Many of you probably know that I have called for Washington National Cathedral to remove two windows on the south side of the nave that depict the lives of the Confederate generals Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. These windows, along with their inscriptions, seek to reframe the Civil War and to present these two generals as saintly, exemplary Christians. Both of these windows display the Confederate battle flag. The Confederate battle flag is a common image in American culture, but in the wake of the shootings in Charleston the week before last, we have all become aware of how deeply offensive this image is, especially to African Americans. The fact that so many find it so offensive should be enough of a reason to fold it up and put it away.
When we had two Confederate windows in that cathedral, in our cathedral, we were telling a very particular story about our country, and quite frankly, not a good story. It was a barrier to our ministry. It was an insult to many people of color, and I came to see very clearly that the only way to move forward was to take them down.
So having those windows, particularly in the worship space, in the main worship space, the nave of this cathedral, they served as a contrast, a dramatic contrast against what we say very often, or most of the time when we are together for baptisms, a very crucial question. Will you respect the dignity of every human being? And those windows reflected something very different.
Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee were traitors. The Civil War was fought because people wanted the right to enslave other human beings.
To see the picture that these two were saints, and you're going, no, they were traitors. And why are traitors lifted up as saints in this sacred space?
I had absolutely no hesitation in thinking that those windows should come out. In fact, I was horrified when I was made aware that they were a part of the cathedral and had been a part of the cathedral for so long, and that it would take the massacre of 9 African American human beings by a white supremacist who cloaked himself in Confederate symbols, that it would take that for people to begin to say, oh, maybe we should do something about these Confederate symbols that we have been protecting.
Whether they were contextualized or not, to have them in the cathedral was sending a message to people of color that was not a message we wanted to send or that we should be sending from this cathedral.
They did reflect a time when individuals felt that they were superior and that they had the right to enslave another human being, to take away the rights of another child of God.
I was asked by the dean of the cathedral if I would serve as the co-chair of the committee that was responsible and tasked with coming up with the plan to replace the Robert E. Lee Stonewall Jackson windows.
Meeting with the committee was really interesting because I think we all have different ideas of what could be possible in a space as kind of compact as the windows.
There's a wonderful passage of scripture that really challenges us to really examine ourselves fully, but to not deceive ourselves by looking into a mirror and then walking away from that mirror and saying that there's nothing wrong with us.
It's difficult in the culture in which we exist right now to have any type of conversation where people are actively listening and hearing what another person is saying.
We were discussing in that task force issues of race, issues of racial injustice, issues of white supremacy, We were discussing the story that was not told in those windows.
There was never, it seems to me, any serious consideration ever given to what those windows, whether it was 1930 or 1950, what those windows would mean for people whose grandmothers, great-grandmothers, descendants had been slaves and who were living in Jim Crow, and even in Washington, D.C. in the Jim Crow South.
The cathedral is taking that motto, a house of prayer for all people, seriously.
This is what we need to do to call attention, to keep attention on what needs to be done. And if people are upset with us, they just need to be upset with us.
We have in our stained glass windows two of the most prominent leaders of the movement to enshrine slavery in this hemisphere for all time. And where do we as Christians place ourselves in that conversation?
Ours was a sacred task. We wanted an artist who also represented as best he or she could the oppression of history.
We knew that we wanted an African-American artist. We felt that that was a very important message. We also knew that we wanted an artist who could address racial justice appropriately for a cathedral, but also with honesty and integrity.
We weighed the importance of giving an artist a really free hand and an ability to communicate what they thought was important rather than dictating a specific plan for what they needed to do.
There's a constant process that we ought to all be involved in, and how we are becoming more reflective of the image that we have been created in. And sometimes we are not trying to reflect that image, but really just trying to polish up our own.
I thought it was a really good sign that we were going to move forward and introduce the project to an artist who had a vision and who had demonstrated an understanding of American history, of African American history.
And with that, we chose Kerry James Marshall.
What is my artistic process?
You just can't even imagine the elation of the committee when Kerry said yes.
I was very aware of his work well before he came into the cathedral's orbit, and so was excited that we got him.
Having someone as significant as Kerry James Marshall say yes to this process is noteworthy because of the gifts and talents that he obviously brings. But I think his willingness to say yes goes so much further than even the art.
Kerry James Marshall is one of the leading artists of his generation, and his work has really spread throughout the country in terms of its importance to chronicling the African American experience, the American experience, the experience of migration from the South to the North, of millions of Black folks over the course of the 20th century.
We chose Kerry James Marshall because he's an eminent, well-respected, highly regarded artist, unquestionably one of the most important artists in the world, but also an artist who is Black, who uses the color black to convey the absence and the presence of the individual.
If you're starting anything, you got to try and define what the purpose of the work you're doing is going to be. So you try to figure out what it's supposed to be about, and then once you figure out what it's supposed to be about, then you try to figure out what the most appropriate way to represent it is going to be.
Well, I just follow Kerry's lead on what he's trying to do and hope that I'm understanding what his vision is. I think one of the statements he had to me is like, don't read a lot into this. It's all right there. There's no magic secret thing behind the curtain or behind this sign or anything that you have to do a lot of analysis. It's all right there. It's for you to see. It's easy to understand.
with any kind of experience, when they encounter those windows and see what's presented there and read the information that's available, should be able to come to the conclusion that these are about a just society. I mean, that it's not mysterious, because the essence of justice, I mean, really is fairness.
He doesn't beat around the bush with us. These windows are right there, right in front of you, and they say what they want to say very clearly. No foul play, fairness, a stance of no to racism.
One of the most remarkable things about Marshall's design for the windows is that all of the figures that he has placed in them are anonymous. We can't tell who they are specifically, and that anonymizes them in a way that allows us to imagine their identities however we choose.
Often trying not to do what the most conventional or the most expected thing is, and so that's how I began. And then once I started defining the project, then images start to present themselves.
Now, if anything comes of this project, it is people coming into this space filled with wonderment and awe and divinity, whatever your faith orientation might be, and seeing this demonstration of one's march towards justice and being reminded that it is grounded in our faith, our biblical faith, but in our faith in humanity.
I'm interested in the moment. I'm interested in now. And I think those windows in the cathedral right now will do some work that I think is important to be done.
I think it's progress, and I want to commend the cathedral on the progress that is being made by taking those windows out and putting the new ones in.
It's very exciting because it's given us an opportunity to remove a symbol that represents for many a source of pain and replacing it with an expression of contemporary beauty that harkens back to the joy, the power, the strength of Black America, and how much we as a nation are bound together as one people.
You can look at these windows over and over again, I think, and see something different and something new. And these windows, now depict this story of freedom on the move.
If you look at the windows, I mean, you can see it's processional, but it doesn't just go in one direction, it goes in a kind of circular set of movements.
They speak to the fact that we can always make progress, that we can always change, that we can always grow, that God's kingdom is always calling us forward to be better than we are, to learn, to grow, to change. I think those windows are signs of that.
We can all talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, but the word must become flesh. So I guarantee you, if an African American comes in here, and I can't speak for all African Americans, if they're coming in from a different religious tradition, that says to them, we are seriously trying here at the cathedral. Again, let me use the motto, right? To be a house of prayer for all people.
I'm always thinking about the subject and its purpose and its place. And then after that, I try to figure out how not to do it like somebody else did it.
Poetry communicates emotion. It communicates mental images that can be different for each individual. It's not about facts so much as it is about hope, it is about vision. The words that Elizabeth Alexander gives us will be ones that ask us to think expansively, ask us to engage our emotions, to engage our feelings, and to engage our hopes.
I hope that everyone who comes into the cathedral for the first or the 100th time, as a believer, as a pilgrim, as a tourist, that when they turn and find this bay and this window and that poem, that they are caught up in awe and surprise and delight and inspiration. What is ultimately unveiled and what we will see, God willing, for centuries to come, is worthy of this moment and might provide both a bridge to the past and a healing process that is reflected in glass and stone.
This moment that we're sharing now, as we're all praying, as we're all hoping, what I hope, and of course, hope that we're all committing to, is the process. Because the work that's ahead of us will really be the work of taking care of the seeds that we put in the ground. And so, harvest time for our work now is not in this moment. It's in the moments yet to come. And sometimes what we really have to be happy with is that we will never eat the fruit from the seeds that we planted.
I think the windows themselves, when they're encountered, bring people to think about that, about their own change, about their own vision of race in this nation of ours. And so what I'm hopeful for is that this is a lesson about hope for the cathedral and about our faith, that we can always be building and changing and growing and drawing closer to the beloved community.